Well, why don't we start with West Germany, since I think in terms of the system, both are capitalist countries, and maybe it's a little bit easier to start there. So in West Germany, that phrase wouldn't have the same meaning. For Americans, saying that you're in it for the money just means you're getting rich, and that's the goal. And I think in West Germany, just doing something for the money doesn't make necessarily all that much sense unless you're really focused on something else outside of your job, such as the vacation time that you have, your family, or a hobby. And all of these things are simply more important than your day job. So it's not about money itself. Money isn't the end, but it's a means to an end, such as taking that vacation. And I think that there's a way that people still look down upon, Westerners still look down upon people who view money as an end in itself. So on the one hand, you have this tradition of saving versus spending, so that ostentatious consumption in West Germany was regarded as vulgar. And I think it still is in general in unified Germany. In contrast to Americans, who are perfectly happy to talk about how much they earn, West Germans tend to demur and not want to talk about it, also perceived as a bit vulgar and American in particular. And the other thing is that people aren't simply focused on money, they're focused on quality of life. So a lot of people, my wife, who is German, is a good example. She was willing to forego a higher salary and, in fact, in some ways, more managerial responsibility for broadly accessible benefits like vacation and more time away from work. And at the social level, this is why you have medical insurance for everyone, universal health care, and pensions that are provided by the state. So the idea is to improve the quality of life rather than simply be focused on money. And then the final thing that I think is important for us as Americans to remember is that the distribution of wealth and income in West Germany was not as unequal as it is in the US. And that's still the case for all of unified Germany. CEOs simply do not earn the amount of money that they earn in America. Now, GDR, it was very different because money wasn't a big factor in the East German economy. So there's no reason to become rich, at least in terms of East German marks, because you couldn't really buy more. You could buy what there was. So if you wanted to have better material circumstances, like a nicer apartment or a car, then you could ask the state to give you something better. That very often didn't really work. And when there are shortages of a given product in a market economy, the price usually would go up. But since prices were set by the state, if you wanted a consumer good, you couldn't just try and add some more money on top of it because the price was set and nobody really cared. Instead, because there were shortages, you had to wait in line. And the only way to jump the line, to shorten the wait, to reduce the amount of time, was to offer somebody something that either they or the state wanted. So let's take the state briefly. The state wanted model citizens, socialist personalities, which meant that you could join the party and be rewarded. So a lot of people joined the party, tried to be model workers to earn bonuses, sometimes in the form of extra food or appliances. If you became a manager and you did well and your service merited it, you might get a car and a driver to go along with it. A spy that I've written about was able to buy West German audio equipment. Artists, especially the ones who did very well in the West, were allowed to use some of their Western earnings to buy Western goods. But even then, we should remember that money wasn't the focus. In fact, people lived pretty modestly. After 1989, when communism fell and we learned how the Politburo, the leadership of the East German state, lived, people were really surprised to find out that they lived what were pretty much middle-class lives. There was no sort of rich, ostentatious, and hedonistic lifestyle that went on. So most East Germans who didn't want to make a career working with the party simply tried to barter for what they wanted. You trade stockings, which were in short supply, for coffee and things like that. So for East Germans, being in it for the money had no meaning unless you meant Western money. Because by the 1980s, the Communist Party started to loosen travel restrictions. And they also opened up stores called intershops where East Germans could buy Western goods for Western money. And the idea that the state had was to soak up all the West German money that was circulating in the GDR from family visiting family and friends and people traveling and things like that. The problem is that it fostered black markets and the idea that capitalist money was better than communist money, that you could get almost anything for Western money.